Hey there, Joe LoRusso, Director of Aviation here at Ramos Law. I'm going to be responding to some of the comments from our viral video on pilot mental health. Make sure to go watch it if you haven't watched it yet. I'm sure these comments are going to be interesting to say the least. Pretty sensitive and divisive topic. So let's jump right into it. First one, if you need counseling, you shouldn't be flying. Here's the issue with that. We've been dealing with that for a long time. The FAA expects pilots to be superhuman. The public expects pilots to be superhuman. We're not allowed to have emotions. We're not allowed to react to life events. You can't grieve. You can't deal with a divorce. You can't deal with the stress of raising children. You can't have any emotion at all, apparently. That is very frustrating, and honestly, it's inconceivable. It doesn't make sense. Pilots are humans as well, and I don't understand why the public would not want the people flying their airplanes to be able to go see a therapist if a loved one passed away, to get grief counseling, to feel better, right? And then come back and fly that airplane rather than just internalize it and sit up in the cockpit. That makes absolutely no sense. So I get it. I get that the court of public opinion on that, but I promise you want your pilots to be able to get help if they need to get help. All right, next one. Problem is, we would still hesitate to do so because we don't trust the system. I assume the we in that is going to be pilots. I get it. That has been a wall that is built for so long, where it's pilots on one side and the FAA on the other. And, are they down there because we're up here, or are we up here because they're down there, right? We got to break down those walls. The FAA exists. It's real. Those people are not going anywhere. So we got to find a way to coexist, right? So I definitely get that. And I think stuff like the compliance philosophy for pilot enforcement actions, I think that's helping, right? I think that's building trust. It's pilots dealing with pilots in the FAA, right? Pilots talking to pilots. So we're getting there. I definitely get it. I fly with a lot of people who have that exact same sentiment. So don't worry about it. I get it, but we do need to get better about that. All right, next one. This is really bad advice. We need to learn from past errors. Google Andreas Lubitz, German wings. Okay, first of all, that was in EASA. That wasn't under FAA. Obviously did not happen in this country. We do not have German wings here. Secondly, that happened under the current culture of mental health and piloting. Why wouldn't we want to change that culture to improve that culture so that we don't have that happen again? This is literally us trying to stop that and learn from that. So I don't really get the comment basically saying, hey, that happened under the old rules. Do we really want to change the rules so that doesn't happen again in the future? That doesn't really compute with me. I do hope that we change the rules and we learn from that event so that we don't have a similar one in the future. All right, next one. Can a pilot go to a therapist or a psychologist and not report it? Could the FAA find out? Wouldn't that breach confidentiality? Obviously, 3 questions here. Could the pilot go to a therapist or a psychologist and not report it? Absolutely. They could definitely do that. However, if they do that, when they go and fill out their medical application at whatever schedule they need to do it based on their medical and their ratings, and they don't check yes, they would technically be defrauding the government, and they could risk an emergency revocation of every certificate in their pocket, including pilot's licenses and medical. They could also face up to 3 years in jail and a fine of $250,000. So yes, but the next one in there, could the FAA find out? Absolutely. The most common way that the FAA finds out is divorce. It doesn't matter if it's male or female or sex or whatever. We call it the ex-spouse report. A lot of pilots, when they go through a divorce, their ex calls the FAA and goes, oh, by the way, did you know? That's how the FAA traditionally finds out, or most commonly finds out. Wouldn't that breach confidentiality? No, that's a hotline complaint in that circumstance. Anybody could call in and report if they know that a pilot is doing something that they shouldn't. I think that question is more geared towards, can the FAA reach out to medical records and grab them? No, they cannot. The FAA is a public authority under HIPAA. They can't just grab those records, but they certainly can ask for it. 14 CFR 67.413 says they can ask for it. All right, next one. Just put therapists in the local airport bar. Okay, first of all, that's hilarious. Second of all, actually kind of a problem, it turns out. So the reason why, and I know this has been a big thing with airline pilots, right? It's always that drunk airline pilot, right? Alcohol and aviation are hand in hand. Take a step back. Why do we think that's the case, right? Pilots don't seek therapists. They don't seek psychologists, psychiatrists for issues because they would have to report it. And they don't take medication because they would have to report it. So what are they allowed to do? They self-medicate. They go to alcohol, right? Because alcohol is legal, 8 hours bottle to throttle. Some of them overdo it. So it's one, hilarious comment, but two, it kind of highlights one of the sad parts of our industry. All right, next one. Airplanes do not defy physics. They take advantage of physics. Okay, I knew I was going to catch flack on this after the video. I will point out that NASA and the FAA do not agree on how a wing works. Google rolling ball theory, obviously Bernoulli's principle with the high and low pressure. There are a lot of theories out there of how a wing works, and are we sure we really know? So I'm sure I'm going to get flack on that one too. All right, next one is, in 20 years of flying, I've never met a pilot stressed about flying the aircraft. It's a time away from home where their families have to get by without them, kids acting up, wives stepping out, etc. It's all the non-flying aspects of life that are stressful. Around 4 hours, we're in the flight deck with no cell phones, just talking to each other, enjoying the views. That's the easy part. I've also been flying for 20 years, and I agree with you. I often say that's the most peaceful time, except when we're doing weather flying and flying through storms. That part's a little stressful. But I agree with you. It is all these other aspects. So whether we're talking about the stress of flying itself or the stress that flying creates, I think we're still getting to the same point of, does it really matter, and do you need to see a therapist or a counselor sometimes in life? Next one, just don't report it. I know a guy that went through full prostate cancer treatment and didn't report a thing. Flew through the entire process, 7'5" guy, not a private pilot. Yeah, a lot of these comments have to do with, well, just don't report it. So I get it. Let me tell you the flip side of that. When the FAA finds out, if the FAA finds out, we're talking about every one of that guy's certificates gone. So probably has an ATP, right? It's going to come in an emergency revocation, meaning he's got to turn over his certificates immediately. ATP, commercial, CFI, CFII, MEI, type ratings, that 7.5 type, that medical, gone. We're talking about retesting on all of them, doing the written test again, doing the oral again, doing the practical again. Literally all that stuff, that pilot's going to have to recreate everything. So I get it. A lot of people saying not to report, but what about the other side, right? His career's over. All right, next one. Peer support groups are more effective than one-on-one counseling, I've heard. We should open up to that too. Not everyone is going to benefit from a single stranger who doesn't get it necessarily. I agree. Yeah, there's a lot of support groups all over the industry. Pilots like to talk to pilots, right? Like, how do you know there's a pilot in the room? They'll probably tell you. Pilots enjoy that kind of camaraderie, right, with each other. And we've seen that in alcohol with the HIMSS program. Pilots don't tend to click well with AA. So we have birds of a feather, right, where pilots can all get together and talk about their addiction and work through it together, pilot on pilot. I agree. There's probably some benefit to having a group therapy with pilots. All right, next one is what an insane concept. At the FAA, tag the FAA. I also agree. What an insane concept at FAA. I hope that gets tagged in this reaction. So that's all I got now. Make sure to follow us on all of our social media platforms. The links are going to be down in the show notes. Throw comments on our videos. I don't mind doing these and commenting on them and reacting and responding to all those comments. Trust me, we do read them. So make sure to follow, throw some comments on them. I'll get at you.